is like growing up in this progressive area, in the most progressive place on the planet. This is not happening. I'm not getting discriminated against for being white. Like I said, I'll get some insults here or there, but it's not
That's
like
called being discriminated against for being white. Yes.
Okay, sure, but not on an institutional level for jobs. Like no
How would
one's
you
like,
know?
we're not
What are you
hiring.
comparing it to?
What's going on, you guys? Today we have Tim Pool getting made fun of on his own show. He's getting schooled over and over again. I think it's some type of humiliation kink that he's got. But yeah, Tim Pool is just getting humiliated. I'm giving my commentary. Let's watch.
Idea that this is because of the demonization of men is not nearly so borne out as it is. People had this expectation of what life was supposed to be, and it's just not happening. And so all these, like, as a whole, society in our generation is more unhappy because we're not getting what we want. We don't have the house. We don't have the white picket fence.
So once again, the issue is if you're an 18-year-old white man and you grew up in a society, you've experienced no privilege.
Why do you say that? No privilege. Like when I say because you don't have the Gen X privilege, right? You don't have that economy. But when it's like, hey, like, because again, I hate the word privilege here because it's like you don't feel the idea of black people or your cops are less likely to attack you
because that's
you're black,
not
right.
Because what I would say is the challenge with what you're describing is it's based on class for the most part.
It's
with sometimes a racial component.
I was reading a study actually from, I want to say this is it's on a book called How Fascism Works, which is like the most liberal book I could have brought up here. But it was,
so right here, Tim Pool is saying it's a corner of the club, that these conservatives, there's different corners of conservatism, but you have this one corner that's saying, oh, these young men have it the hardest. And that, that is the running story amongst, and guess who it's most popular with? I'll give you like 1 second to think about it. Of course, it's young men, and that is how they get so many of these, so many of that audience to follow into this movement.
Was talking about the hiring practices of people who report themselves as former convicts, and it was like black versus white, not a former convict, black versus white, former convict. And for like the black who are not a former convict, the percentage of whether or not you get hired is already like 10 times lower or something ridiculously low. And then for the black convict level, even the white former convicts were getting like hired at like a 10 to 5% higher rate. It does seem like there is at least this product of, and people call that privilege. I don't like that because if I'm a white guy not getting hired, I don't feel privileged, right? That's why I don't like the word.
So the issue is there's no such thing as white privilege. That is a fact statement, not an opinion.
What do you mean by that? Because what I just described is what people mean. Because I think that's a bad word.
Because you can when you're trying to determine any kind of like fact basis in science, we look for controls. And when you look at any other non-white nation, these concepts don't exist. However,
we're a unique nation.
Similar,
the history
meaningless.
Of racism.
Similar.
No, I'm saying it's meaningless.
So if I finish the point that I'm trying to make, instead of you interrupting before the point can be completed,
okay.
The Han Chinese, for instance, have an ethnic majority and supremacy, and they experience what one would define as a privilege.
Okay.
But it's not because it's white privilege.
Yeah, it's Han privilege, sure.
It's just majority privilege. A nation's ethnic and cultural majority tends to dictate what they want and what they expect.
Okay.
That will never go away nor change.
Well, I think it can change. I think if expectations change, but you just described it. The point is,
so the point that I was making,
you're agreeing with the concept, which
there's no white privilege. And if you're a Gen Z white man, you've never experienced such a thing. So when they say, white guys would go and apply for a job, they get it. And now a 17-year-old white guy applies and they go, no white people, get out. And he goes, there's no privilege because there isn't.
No white people? I'm sure this has happened before, but like, is there like a massive influx of people like we don't hire white people? I mean, first of all, it's literally illegal, right?
It should be, but this is typically what the left supports. So we interviewed a pro skateboarder
supporting the idea of we can't hire white men. Like,
absolutely,
they're supporting the idea of like I worked at
Floyd era went in the to people of color to women and
right here it really is just it's a huge brain slurpee. It's really just a lot of it screws with your brain, with your mind a little bit, because you have Tim Pool saying, oh yeah, I would never identify with the oppressor role. I have nothing like that. We're not the oppressor whatsoever. And, he's going to say something along the lines of, well, now even young white men can't get jobs. Well, that's, again, this is going to say, well, whatever they did to the minorities, whatever they did to women, whatever they're doing to trans people, to gay people, however you want to put it, all these different marginalized groups, they're wanting to continue that. Whoever is running the show, that's how the system is working, is that you have the haves and the have-nots. So if you didn't care for it whenever it happened to these marginalized groups, well, now you are able to see what's happening. The only thing is that, again, the brain slurpee, he's going to project that's what's going on now, is that these marginalized groups are the ones who are now wanting to put you down. They're the oppressor. They're wanting to oppress you. Now that they're sort of going to get a grip on this hierarchy, and that's how it always has to be. And now you have to fall short. Now you have to be the one who is answering for all of these terrible things, you know? And it's like, no, we're all getting screwed, Tim.
The S&P 100 or
boosting
something.
a marginalized group is not the same as saying no white men. If there are people that say you cannot hire white men,
it's a matter of
because
policy.
You're assuming it's a
illegal
zero-sum
to
game.
hire white men.
Yeah, no. Wait, what? It's illegal to hire a white man?
If he started a company and all he were hiring were white men, T-minus what until a lawsuit comes in? They would be investigated. You cannot start an S&P 100 company or some serious company without hiring at least some women, some minorities. So it's illegal to hire based on merit, which yes, in practice makes it illegal.
Well, that's not illegal to be hired based on merit, first of all, because the idea that because you're describing it like, they just found a black woman on the street and they're like, get in here, right? Versus like, hey, when you look at a pool of qualified candidates, you can't select one race, which is a very different thing. And it's not a zero-sum game. You have a bunch of different slots. If it was one slot and you're like, for this one job, you can't hire a white guy. I think like the only thing that would ever make sense for that is if you're like casting for a show and it's this character's black, right?
But it is a fact that this happens. That white guys are passed over.
Right, but you're describing it as a phenomenon that is so widespread that every 18-year-old Zillennial is experiencing this, which, at least in my experience, is like growing up in this progressive area, in the most progressive place on the planet. This is not happening. I'm not getting discriminated against for being white. Like I said, I'll get some insults here or there, but it's not
That's called being discriminated against for being white, yes?
Okay, sure, but not on an institutional level for jobs. Like, no one's like, we're not
What are you
hiring.
comparing it to?
I'm comparing it to like every other white person that I graduated with, like all the white people around me. Like none of these people are
generations don't experience the same thing as the other generation. Like literally, Gen Z men are struggling.
I am in Gen Z technically, and I grow up around, I hang out with a lot of younger people because I had a deferred college like graduation. So.
Would you agree that Gen Z men are struggling?
Yes, absolutely, but I don't think it's because of white men discrimination.
I didn't say it was. It's a component.
Yeah.
The point is when the left comes out and says we want affirmative action in hiring and colleges and public contracting, the 17 or 18-year-old white man is going, whatever it is you think boomers got, I don't have. I don't get. So when you create a racially discriminatory system, you have created a privilege for certain classes of people.
Yeah, in that specific thing. Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I was talking about. Like, you don't even...
I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say conspiracies whatsoever, but I mean, I know majority of my audience is not going to watch something like Tim Pool, and I'm showing this to show the divide and conquer that's going on. This is what's getting pushed to conservative people, is that you're upset about you not being able to afford groceries. This is because of these marginalized groups. It's because they're getting rights. So every single time that they're going to get rights, you're going to get oppressed. That is what he's saying, and there's no other way around it. So this is just the mental gymnastics that they're going to do to say, oh, look, to continue the oppression of marginalized groups, to continue the divide, to continue the fact of, hey, look, you guys are still going to get oppressed even as we're getting oppressed by another oppressor. It's the house slave mentality. It's exactly what's going on, is that they're going to continue to blame anyone that's out in the fields for what's going on, and they're going to cuddle up and cozy up next to the master, you could say, who doesn't really give a fuck about any of us whatsoever. And if you can't see it, then you really have to open your freaking eyes.
Like, just for a second, assume that the phenomenon that we both agree exists is called white privilege, just because that's what people call it. It exists insofar as, like, yeah, this person might be preferenced in this specific area, or, you might not just face the same problem as a black person here, but you don't experience white privilege. You don't. I don't feel the absence of something. Well, you agree the majority group in control is going to have some sort of like in-group preference for that same
which for the past 15, 20 years has been liberal left. So they're white critical.
To an extent. I mean, our country is not like a liberal left majority ruled by. They're not like the majority.
When Jack Dorsey was in charge of X, for instance, if you post FBI crime stats, you'd get banned.
I'm sorry, your example of whether or not white men or liberals are in control is just Twitter not allowing like...
Perhaps I could describe it as Facebook, YouTube, and X, the three largest social media platforms in the country and the world.
Is a big component of
banning
our lives,
people for posting fact data because it was deemed racist.
Yeah, but that's not just posting the fact data. Almost if you're posting like 1350 stuff, it's because you're trying to paint a greater narrative of, oh, black people have a crime gene or something.
So, so you're not disagreeing with me?
I'm saying that if you're using the example of like, oh, look at our institutions and how they're overwhelmingly liberal. If you're talking about social media, yeah, they were for a while. I think that has since shifted, obviously.
All right, you guys, that's enough. I know that it's probably, brain rotting to watch this shit. I'm just letting y'all know what exactly is going on. And these are people that are on his show that I don't know. I think that he is wanting to come to an agreement at some point with these guys, but it's clear that he's in his own bubble, that if he isn't believing necessarily what he's saying, he's damn sure selling it, and he's wanting to sell it to all these people that it is the liberal media that is wanting to take you down, that it isn't, the conservative media who's wanting to literally deport people out of the country for saying whatever, however they feel about this current war that's going on. So yeah, I mean, it's constant finger pointing. This is constant, just misdirection that is going to benefit no one but the ones in power at the very end of the day. Again, I know this is all might be scary, whatever, but at the very end of the day, we have to find ways to look past all this, to be able to talk to these people and say, look, I see the good in you, which is that you are able to recognize that you're finally getting the shaft of it as well, just like all of us have been, so we can come together. It's not me I'm not oppressing you. I'm not the one that's telling you what the hell to say. I don't want you to start shitting on me anymore. I want you to stop. I mean, we're both getting shit on. I don't need you to actually shit on me anymore. We can come together because we're going to have to come together. This is the other half of the country. The only way that you can take down somebody like Amazon, like Walmart, you will have to stand alongside a freaking Trumper, and that sucks because these Trumpers stink, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. I know everybody can relate to that, but as a people, we have to come together because we're all getting the shaft. So let me know what you guys think. It's another day in the progressive way.